Hello, Bravo bosses, and welcome to the Bravo Investigator podcast with me, your host, Dana. Today on the agenda for Reality Roundup, we are talking about Summer House, BPR/The Valley, Teen Mom, and the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Let's get into it. Happy Monday, everyone. I hope everyone had a good weekend. Mine was okay. I took Judy to the vet yesterday, which was Saturday, because I'm recording this on Sunday, and she bit me through the arm. So that was pretty painful. But, Judy has some fear when she goes to the vet because she's had a lot of medical trauma. So I don't know. We thought she was doing well. I was giving her some cheese. She was being really sweet with the vet. And then they tried to take her upstairs to do blood work, and she lost it and she bit me. But that's okay because she's my baby angel and I don't mind. And then today, Sunday, I'm recording this, and then my sister is coming over, and I'm really excited to see her. I don't actually talk to you guys about her much, but she's like my best friend. She's a chiropractor, and she's going through this weird, interesting thing with her boyfriend where they've been together like 2.5 years, and then he just kind of broke up with her out of the blue and said that his feelings had changed. And this whole weird thing had happened like a few months prior where one of my sister's friends had found like a Hinge profile for him, but he said it wasn't him. And my sister had like checked his phone, and we could never really figure out whether it was him or not. Like, I know it sounds dumb, especially for me. Like, I'm an investigator. Like, I should believe this. I should have investigated it. But for some reason, we really like believed him. We really like didn't think he was like smart enough to do this. I don't know. But even after that, things were weird between them. And then he said his feelings changed. So they broke up and they were living together. So it was a really big deal to break up when you live together and you're splitting finances and stuff. And then 6 weeks later, he's like, oh, I think I made the biggest mistake of my life, blah, blah, blah. So they're still kind of going through that. And I haven't hung out with her much since she's been going through it. So I'm excited to see her. And she hasn't met my dog Barry yet. So it should be a pretty fun Sunday. But I hope you guys had an excellent weekend and are excited that we have our new Bravo shows. We've got The Valley, even though it's on Tuesday and it's Tuesday night, which really pisses me off because I have to go into office on Wednesday, which means that I can't just like really soak in the content on Wednesdays because if it airs late Tuesday nights, which it does, I go to bed at 9K, guys. Like, I go to bed really early, don't judge. And normally I'd watch it like the next morning, like Wednesday morning, but I have to work in office on Wednesday. So I already have to get up at like 6 in the morning to take the dogs to daycare. It's like a whole thing. But I'm just really excited to have more Bravo content, especially The Valley, just because without Vanderpump Rules, it just sort of feels like we don't have anything in that realm right now. We are getting Vanderpump Villa soon. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to watch. Like, obviously, I'm interested in seeing Stassi, but it just feels like we're doing something very obvious here. Like, she's going to take on the Lisa Vanderpump role. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to enjoy it. And then I believe the new Vanderpump Rules reboot has started filming. We've seen some of the cast members on Instagram. Same thing. I'll probably watch a couple of episodes, but I'm not super jazzed about that either. But we might as well get into our episode so that, we can all get on with our day. Let's start with Summer House because there has been a ton of news in the Summer House sphere. The girls are literally just doing media, tons and tons of media. And that makes a lot of sense, especially with Paige and Hannah just writing a book, How to Giggle, and they're doing like, yeah, their press tour, their media rounds and stuff. But the Summer House girls were all in Vulture, and there was an article about it. Now, when I say the girls were all in Vulture, I mean Sierra, Paige, Gabby, Lindsay, and Amanda. Notably missing is Lexi. And we'll get into this in a bit, but I'm feeling really bad for Lexi. I really feel like she's been left out in so many different ways, not just from the girls, from the friendships, but like literally now from articles about Summer House when Gabby's in this article, and Gabby filmed way less than Lexi this season. So I don't know. It just sort of really feels like she's being pushed out, and I'm not even sure if it's production, people, what it is, but it's very interesting that she's not in this article. So I'm just going to discuss some of the highlights that we saw in this article. So it says that Paige Paige says that she wanted to marry Craig even after giving him so much grace. And this is a quote from the article. The season 9 premiere in February was the most watched in the show's history, with 1.6 million viewers in the first week. It is possible that many of them tuned in to witness the beginning of the end of Paige and Craig, who broke up a few months after filming ended. Both have denied infidelity, but at the end of the premiere, a teaser for the finale showed Paige referencing the fact that Craig at one point was texting other bitches. Of that moment, she now says, honestly, I don't know if it was platonic or anything more, but there were multiple times in our relationship where I gave him so much grace. Like, should I have broken up with him a year and a half ago when I saw him texting hearts to a girl? Probably, but again, I loved him and I wanted to marry him. So when she initially had said this, like in the preview for the finale, where she's like that she caught him texting two bitches, we were all like, wait, what? What are you saying? And then Craig went on the Tamron Hall show and said, like, that's absolutely not true. So I don't know. He kind of implied that she was making it up and playing it up for the show, but now she's actually saying it. Okay, I don't know if you guys remember this, but I posted months ago on Instagram a very niche video of Paige with the Chicks in the Office girls, where she was doing an interview with them, and she was like, "Oh, I keep seeing like Paige, or sorry, I keep seeing Craig texting you guys and laughing with you guys," and I was like, "Wait, what?" And I made it a joke, meaning like, "Oh, those are the two bitches that Craig was texting." But when she's saying texting hearts to a girl, I don't know, it sparked that back in my mind, and it's like the Chicks in the Office girls, or is it someone he works with, or is it a girl? Like, if this was just like a random girl, she would have broken up with him. Who is this girl? Like, I'm not denying what Paige is saying whatsoever, but I'm very confused as to why she wouldn't break up with him if she's saying it is what it is, right? She's implying that he is cheating on her. Like, texting hearts to a girl, is it platonic? Like, platonic in what way? Who is the girl? And for her to say, like, but I loved him and wanted to marry him, okay, but if you think he's cheating on you, that's where I'm just confused. Like, I mean, obviously, we're going to get more about this when I guess the finale airs or when Paige goes on Watch What Happens Live after the fact, but like, who who are you texting? Right? Like, I'm just super confused. I just have this feeling it's like it's nothing. I don't know. I just, despite Paige saying that she loved him and wanted to marry him, I just don't see her as the type that would accept full-on cheating. But, I guess maybe in her mind she deemed this something else. But in our minds, we're deeming it, we don't know what to deem it because what is it? I think it depends on who you're texting. Like if you're texting hearts to your sister, that's fine, right? If you're texting hearts to the Chicks in the Office girls, I would say that that's fine too. I'm just super curious who this is and whether Paige even had a conversation with him about it. It sort of seems like she didn't from the way this is written. I don't know. This is really interesting. And then it says Sierra and Amanda said they protected Craig, but now all bets are off. I will say, and you can kill me or not, says Sierra, turning to Paige, but she saved a lot of face in the beginning, referring to the kindness Paige showed him on camera and in interviews despite Craig's behavior. She did him favors that I was like, you probably shouldn't. I think a lot of us have protected Craig, Amanda said. He's lucky. And now all bets are off, said Sierra. Okay, so a few things about this. I think Amanda saying like he's lucky and a lot of us protected him. I think Amanda in particular is referring to like her wedding, right? Because Craig was kicked out of her wedding. They all pretended like he wasn't for years and years and years. And now, like Sierra saying all gloves are off, but I just don't really agree with Sierra in terms of the all gloves are off because why do why are all gloves off right now? It has been so long since they've broken up at this point. Can't we just stop talking about each other? Like I really love the friendship that Sierra and Paige have, but I think when it comes to Craig and the aftermath, I feel like Sierra has been a little bit much. And I like listen, I appreciate that she's got her girlfriend, like standing up for her because Paige really did it for Sierra. Like if you think back to the reunion last year for Summer House, Paige had Sierra's back in such an efficient and effective way. It really seemed like Sierra was struggling to get her words out in terms of how she felt with the whole West situation. And Paige just sort of took it over for her and explained. And so I think Sierra is, trying to return the favor. But because Craig isn't out there being malicious or vicious or really doing anything, I just really don't see the need for there to be all gloves are off. But I really think that when we're talking about protecting Craig and his behavior, it's just really interesting because Craig and Paige had a very curated relationship for their entire relationship. We saw very little cracks. We saw, really nothing wrong in their relationship except this stupid dance back and forth of like, will they or won't they move Charleston, New York, blah, 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 blah. But, it's interesting that she went into this relationship protecting him, and it's not like it's something that happened over time. It sounds like from what Paige or sorry, what Amanda and Sierra are saying, it sort of happened from the jump that she was protecting him from the jump in interviews, in person, everywhere. And I wonder why so early on, before she loved him, right? When she was just getting to know him, why she chose to protect him in that way to the point where it was almost like she couldn't stop, right? Because once you've created this image for your relationship, it would be really weird to make it look different later on, I guess. Okay, and then it says Paige says that she was disappointed by Miss Patricia's comments towards her. Still, like any Bravo celebrity, the Summer House girls have their haters. The people who are the most critical of us are women our age or older, Amanda says. They have said the nastiest things about us, worse than have ever been said about each other. The hypocrisy is wild. Paige is particularly disappointed by an appearance on Watch What Happens Live by Patricia Schul, the 83-year-old matriarch of the Southern Charm, for furthering the narrative that all of Craig's girlfriends are mean to him. Do we ever ask the reverse question of, like, what did he do for two women to have the same exact reaction, she asks? Okay, so Miss Pat on Watch What Happens Live was pretty wild. Like, it was kind of crazy, even just to see Andy's face when she was saying, like, Paige was mean to Craig, and Austin is sitting there saying, like, she's moved on, blah, 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 blah. I had just never seen Andy's face drop like that. I think, I think Miss Pat maybe was speaking out of turn because she really doesn't know Paige and Craig's relationship. I honestly don't know Miss Pat's relationship with Craig. Like, do they really spend much time together outside of filming? I doubt it. And, if Craig and Paige wanted to spend the majority of their relationship, even on camera alone, I feel like that's their prerogative. Like, why would Paige want to get to know an 83-year-old woman, right? I mean, she got to know Madison, so and it wasn't really a place where she felt welcome or she felt like she had community. I didn't really see Miss Pat reaching out to Paige to invite her over to tea and to try to get to know her either, if you think about it. So, I do agree with Paige on that one. And then we have Lindsay talking about the next season of Summer House and RHONY. So it says, right now, the main buzz within the Bravo sphere is whether Lindsay will return next season. The question of how long a new parent can realistically be a cast member of Summer House goes mostly unspoken on screen. But Lindsay is clear that she's, of course, down to film this summer. But that obviously is going to bring a 6-month-old to the house every weekend. Or sorry, but that obviously I'm not going to bring a 6-month-old to the house every weekend. She may, however, soon be filming for a different show. Over the last few weeks, rumors have swirled that she could be joining the cast of RHONY, though Andy Cohen said Bravo hasn't fully decided yet. The conversations are happening. I'm not involved in them, she says, having told Decider earlier in March that wherever they want me, I'm available. So this is something even I was pushing as well. I'm like, yeah, Lindsay for RHONY. RHONY is so awful right now. And initially, when I was thinking of this idea, I was like, wait a minute, what about all the Summer House girls? Because I feel like one of our favorite parts of Summer House has become the city scenes. I really enjoy seeing the girls out in the city, going for drinks, chatting, doing activities in the city. But if we have just Lindsay and we have her joining RHONY, initially I was like, that wouldn't be a fit because she's not really friends with any of the cast. Now, Lindsay has very recently latched herself on to Aaron Leachy, so it definitely is a possibility. But I don't know. I don't know if it's actually a bad move for Lindsay, just because RHONY is so terrible that, is it going to ruin Lindsay's career? Lindsay has such an amazing career on Summer House, and it has brought her, such notoriety. And is she going to lose that by going on sort of a dying show? Like, I could literally anticipate her going on this show, it continuing to do its nosedive, and then RHONY season 3 ends up just being the end. Or sorry, RHONY season 18? I don't really know. Whatever it's called. Like, I could see that being the end of it. And if that's the end of RHONY, then that's the end of Lindsay on reality TV, and that's not ideal. So you don't want to put a rising star on a dying ship, right? So I worry for Lindsay if she were on a show that is just such a shitty show. I wonder if maybe her best bet is to go on something new or to create something new. I mean, what I would honestly love to see is Lindsay in the city with her baby, with her partner, but we know we're never going to get that with Turner. He's just never going to be, camera ready. So unfortunately, we're never going to get, Lindsay in the city. Is that what we call it? Lindsay Hubbard in the city? Hub House in the city? Hubby in the city? Hub and her hubby in the city. Anyway, not happening. But I do want to continue to see Lindsay on TV. I just hope it's in the right fit. All right. And then Paige was in Glamour magazine as well. So I'm going to read a few excerpts from that. So it starts calling it Paige Desorbo and the Art of Radical Relatability. When the 32-year-old Bravo personality split from her longtime boyfriend and spoke openly about anxiety and fertility, she became a figurehead for young women choosing themselves. And with a successful podcast, a new book, and a top secret fashion line on the way, it's paying off. So it says, as soon as you get your first job, you start getting questions about who you're going to marry. You're going out on the weekends and looking for husbands. Men never have that conversation. They're never like, I'm going out this weekend with my boys to find my wife. Never in my 32 years have I heard a man ever say that, but it's kind of programmed into us as women. I didn't realize that I was speaking for a generation on national television by being like, I'm not ready to get married and have a baby. It's almost like one of the worst things that you can say as a woman, because it's like, well, no, we've been programmed since birth that that's your next step. And I think that's really true. I don't think it's necessarily about the first job thing when you get started getting questions about having a baby. For me, I think it's mostly when you're dating someone, right? The minute you start dating someone, it's like, when are you getting engaged? Then when are you getting married? Then when are you having a baby? And while it is the quote unquote normal progression of things, things have changed so much in the past, I don't know, however so many years. I mean, my parents got married, let's say 1977. They were married for 40 years and they just got separated at 70 years old, which is ridiculous, but that's a story for another day. And they got married at 23 years old. Now, if I got married at 23 years old, that would be insane because I would be a bebe. I did not even know how to hard boil an egg at 23 years old. I was still living at home. I was still in school. So, because things are just sort of different now in that sense, or when you start your career, I mean, in this day and age, you're in school way longer than you were when you were younger, which means you're not really ready. I mean, I wouldn't be ready to get married until I was out of school because you haven't started your career. Then you start your career, or you try to, and you start at the bottom, and it takes you a long time to move up. And it takes you even longer because you've been in school for so much longer than some of your counterparts or some of people who are older. And so then you're not really getting your career started until like you're in your 30s, sometimes mid 30s. And then there's a lot of people who don't even realize until they're a bit older that they were in the wrong career to start with, which actually I think that for myself quite a bit. I think I found my passions more so at 40. So I totally can resonate with what Paige is saying in that regard. Um, despite having babies being the next step, it's taking us so much longer to get to that next step. Then it says, one of the things that I always think is crazy is that if you said, I'm going to wait a little to be more qualified before I go get this job, people would be like, that's smart. She's got a good head on her shoulders. But if you say, I'm going to wait to have a baby so that I can be a better mom as I get older and have learned more, it's always taken that as a negative. People are like, oh my God, she's having a baby later in life. And that's true. I feel like a lot of that mentality, though, comes from the mindset of like the female biological clock, and you can't wait forever to have a child. And then there's also this weird mentality that I've noticed online about having children later, where people are like, oh, well, you don't want to be like running around with a 2 year old in your 40s. Like it's a lot more difficult to have the energy as a mom when you're older. But I totally agree with what Paige is saying because, if I had gotten married at 23 and had kids at 23, I don't think I would have been a good mom because I myself would have been so young. Because I think if you watch back, what's the show? The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, the girls are actually talking about how their frontal lobes are not even developed yet. And I think your frontal lobe isn't developed until you're in your mid 20s, I think 25. So if you think about it, what Paige is saying makes complete sense. You should want to wait until your brain is fully formed before you're having children and taking care of others. And it should make sense that you would want to wait till you're a bit older and have more life experience before you decide to take care of something else. Like what she's saying makes complete sense. Sorry, that's my dog sneezing. Then it says, when I was 25, I used to think, if I'm not married with a baby by 30, I'm a failure. I've lost it. But then I got older and my career picked up. I didn't know that I was going to want to go fully in on my own career. I didn't realize how much I love being fully independent. It's not selfish to say I'm picking myself. It's about what feels right in your gut, what makes you happy, and where you feel most aligned. And I totally resonate with that as well, right? You are told when you're in your mid 20s, like if you're not married by a certain point, like you've done something wrong, or why don't you have a boyfriend? I've definitely been given that sort of statement before. And if you find a career that's something that you really love, I don't see what's wrong with that and putting that above other things and putting those things later or not doing those things at all. Myself personally, I have made the personal decision not to have children and not to get married. And I'm not saying I put my everything into my career. I'd say I put my everything into my dogs, or a mixture of, different things in my life. But there's nothing wrong with deciding, hey, now that I've looked at everything that there is in the world, this may not be the thing that I want. And this thing that I didn't know I would be so passionate about, i.e., my career, i.e., Paige, why not lean into that? If it's something that's giving you so much joy, why not put your all into that when that is giving you everything that you need, when that is the thing that's filling your cup? Then it says, it was truly the hardest thing I've ever done. She's talking about breaking up with Craig. I've been getting a lot of flack with people saying, oh, Paige should have ended her relationship earlier, but I was living through it. I was going through feeling it in real time. And I'm sure subconsciously what was keeping me from doing it was knowing that no matter what, in a breakup, the girl is going to get torn apart. I knew that going into it. So yeah, I was nervous. I do feel like we saw her going through it in real time. If you're really watching the conversations that she's having with Sierra on Summer House and Amanda, you can see that she's going through the thought process. She's saying, but I love him and I don't want to see him with anyone else, but I'm not happy. And so you can see that she's literally trying to decide, okay, I have these feelings for him still, but I'm getting all this anxiety. I'm not sure how I feel. And she's also talked quite a bit about how during the tour, she spent a good amount of time just really relaying all of her feelings to Hannah, just saying everything that she could think of when it came to Craig, just to get all of those feelings out so she could really, really just, live in them and feel them and get somebody else's viewpoint. And was she right about the public tearing her apart for it? Yeah. I mean, it's definitely been a very odd breakup. What they initially tried to portray as a very normal breakup has turned into something else. That being said, I do think that part of that is a little bit on her. I think that while the public definitely did give her a lot of flack for this breakup, I think her going into the comments and blocking people and commenting to people back is just, sort of adding fuel to the fire. And it's interesting because she ends up saying here in this article, um, that, where is it? She says, probably the most frustrating thing is feeling like you're misunderstood, but correcting everyone is a full-time job. I think part of growing up is being okay with being misunderstood. I've gotten to the point where I'm like, it's okay if you don't get me. If I met you in real life, I probably wouldn't get you either. And I don't actually think that she's okay with being misunderstood because if she was, she wouldn't be so in the comments, blocking people. She wouldn't be doing all of that. And I'm not judging her for it. I myself get in the weeds sometimes. It's hard to sort of stay out of the comments and stay out of what people are saying about you. But I've gotten some advice recently that you literally, if you're going to take the good, you have to take the bad with it. So I like her mentality of saying, like, I'm always just going to be misunderstood, but I wouldn't truly say that she is out of the thick of it or that she doesn't care about what the public says. I think she very much does care what the public says. And then she says, I think the biggest freedom is being financially independent. It truly is. I feel like none of the decisions I've made in my early 30s are any different than a man's, and that's what makes them mad. If a 32-year-old man said that he wasn't ready to settle down because he wants a couple more years in his career, everyone would be like, and we'll give you an award. Men love acknowledgement for things that they should naturally do. Men love being like, well, I'm not a cheater. Congratulations, you're not supposed to be. Women don't get that grace. And yeah, I mean, I think that being financially independent is, something I've always really aspired for. I mean, listen, I am financially independent in the sense that no one else contributes to my finances. Am I financially independent in the sense that I can support myself? No. And there's moments I definitely have these like fantasies of marrying like some disgusting old man who's going to die in a minute and I could be financially secure with his money and be alone, yeah, that would be great. Am I ever going to do something so fucked up? No, of course not. But I think what Paige is more so referring to is just as a woman being able to take care of yourself because you don't want to be in a situation where you get married and then you get divorced and you have nothing and you're worried about getting a divorce because you're worried that you won't be able to support yourself without this person. And, I have a friend, or I used to have a friend, who is going through a divorce and she's going to be getting alimony from her husband. And it's not because she needs it. She has a job. She just feels like she won't be able to provide her kids with the same, like, quality of life without that money, like, won't be able to go to the same kinds of activities and camps and that kind of thing. And I get that, but at the same time, to sort of be tied to this man for the rest of your life that you hate financially really sucks. Or let's say you didn't end up doing anything in your career and you ended up getting married and then your marriage doesn't work out. You may feel like you're tied to that marriage because you don't know what you're going to do without that person because you financially can't. And that's a really, really terrifying feeling. So I totally understand what Paige is saying. And I remember her telling a story a long time ago where she was dating a guy and they were going on a vacation and she wanted to change the flight time. And he was like, you can change the tickets when you pay for the tickets. And I remember her talking about how that was such a telling moment for her because it was such a moment where she was like, I never want to be in that situation again. I want to be financially independent where I those decisions are mine, basically. And I think that's why she was always so thrown off when Craig would offer to pay for part of her rent and stuff, because I'm the same way because then what's going to happen? If we don't end up together, then what happens to my apartment that I now can no longer afford by myself? Or like, let's say you get a dog with someone or you buy a car with someone. What happens to that thing when you break up? And that's just like a very difficult concept or thing when you are relying on that other person in some sort of way. And that financial independence, which is so difficult for women to have at all, if you do have it, it really is a game changer in life. It gives you not just financial independence, but literally full independence in almost all other regards. So, I really resonate with Paige is saying in that regard. Okay, let's move on to Lexi, I believe. So Lexi was in Glamour magazine, and I'm going to read some of her Q&As and discuss that. So the question is, your relationship with Jesse has been the main storyline this year on Summer House. Ultimately, why did it end? And Lexi says, it just got to a point where I was like, there's no way that I'm going to be able to be long distance with this person when I just don't feel like I can trust him at all. His actions completely took the compatibility we had, and it really made me realize that that's not one that I want to be pouring my heart into a long distance relationship with and taking up my time. What do you mean long distance relationship? So I was a little bit confused by this. So she keeps going on about how, there's no way I'm going to be able to be long distance with this person. Okay, but they both live in New York. So I'm confused. So was she maybe going to be moving back to Toronto while they were still dating? Or maybe she got like a modeling deal somewhere and she wasn't sure if she would have to be traveling for that. Maybe he was supposed to be traveling with her. So maybe that's what she meant by long distance. I I'm confused. I hope we get some clarity on that at the reunion. Then the question is, what was that like for you? Were you into it? And she said, I'm such a lover. I was like, oh my God, this is great. I love it when a guy is like, yeah, this is what I want. Watching back, I wish there was more honesty because I would have made different decisions and choices. I wish that I was able to have more knowledge so that I could have the autonomy to make those decisions. Whereas having a lack of knowledge, I'm just going by what I'm seeing. And then they asked the question, the narrative on the show has been that Jesse was unsure about the speed with which your relationship was progressing, but you also expressed some doubt. Were you all in at that time? And she says, I think in front of my face, Jesse was very different. Behind my back, he had a lot of things that he did not communicate to me. All I saw was him moving so fast, him going for it, him texting me, calling me, wanting to hang out. We would hang out 6 days a week, and he would have hung out 7 if I wasn't like, I need a break. I need to sleep for a day. We would go for dinners, we would go for walks, we would hang out, watch movies, the regular couple stuff, talk about our future, but definitely my feelings were always trying to catch up. So he would set a bar and then I'd be like, okay, perfect. He's setting the bar. Let me meet him there. And I'd meet him there and then he'd set it higher and higher. This is so interesting. And she says this a bit on the show. how, he's saying, I love you so early on. He's saying that 11 days in. And so she's like, okay, I'm just trying to get my feelings to catch up. So it's so interesting that he's trying to portray her as like this crazy girl when he's the one saying, I love you so early on. He said it on camera. I don't know if you guys noticed that when they were in bed together. He's like, I love you. I love you. Do you love me? He's like really trying to make sure that she feels the same way. But if you're reading this, she's sort of saying like, yeah, I even thought this was incredibly fast. I never wanted this to be incredibly fast. And so every time he's moving faster, I'm trying to like run, run, run to catch up. And then the question is, what are your boundaries? And she says, I am always exclusive. Exclusive dating is really important. I think exclusivity for me is just protecting my emotional health, my physical health, my mental health. I think making sure you are equally filling each other's cup is really important. Instead of filling 10 other cups, I just want to give it the best shot we can. At the end of the day, we're two human beings. If you're not on that page, that's totally okay. You have to communicate. So I think that is completely normal. I really respect that of her. I mean, exclusivity is important to, I think, a lot of people, but I think a lot of women don't have the balls to say, I want to be exclusive or nothing else, because I mean, especially in my younger years, did I always want exclusivity? Of course, but I was afraid to say that because I was afraid guys would be like, well, I'm not ready for that, or I don't want that. So I'd give them the chance for it to be like a little something less, like a situationship or I don't know, something or no title just to sort of get the ball rolling in hopes that their feelings would get there and we would become something more. And in my experience, that never happened. But, I really love that for her. She's like, this is what I want. If you're not willing to give that to me, fine, bye. And Jesse had all of those opportunities from day one, which is the point because they asked, and you had those conversations with Jesse as well. And she said, on our first date, I was like, I'm a relationship girl. I'm not hooking up with anyone that I'm not exclusive with. Again, to protect my physical health, mental health, emotional health. That's number one for me. If you're not there, that's totally fine. And yeah, especially the physical health thing, right? Like, who wants to be sleeping with someone who's sleeping with a bunch of other people? Not I. Okay, and then they say Jesse told the rest of the house you'd given him boundaries as well, including not commenting on your female cast members' Instagrams for fun to gas them up. Was that accurate? And she says, I think he never said it in front of my face because then I would have corrected him. But he would say it behind my back, which in turn did make me feel very isolated from everyone else because they hear these things and they're like, what the heck? But that's not how the conversation went. The conversation was like, I still want you to be you and show your personality. But I think that there's a more respectful way that you can do it than by making every girl feel like they could have you. Instead, make them feel like they're your best friend. And he kept saying, oh, they're like my sisters, but they all think that you would date them. And Sierra said that she thinks that he would date her. So that's where I was coming from. And clearly I was right because she felt like that too. And then they ask, what about asking him not to follow girls on Instagram? And Lexi says, I got so many DMs at the start of summer being like, he's following all these girls. You need to watch your back. But at the time, he didn't give me any reason to not trust him until after the toe situation. I was like, you what? And then I looked and I was like, oh, he's following all these girls. They were like college girls, University of Alabama. I'm like, you don't know her. I didn't tell him to unfollow anyone. I never told him to unfollow exes. I never told him any of that. I just said, stop following college girls. If you want to date me, stop doing that. So I think both of those boundaries are completely fair. Like if he starts following these random college girls after they start dating and other people are letting her know that, it is kind of odd because like, why are you following these people? And, gassing up his girls on Instagram, I always thought was like a really cute thing. But I do think she makes an interesting point when she's like, okay, but all of those girls think that you would date them, like Sierra. So if you're saying things on Sierra's Instagram, like, you're the hottest bitch ever, I want you, you're not really doing it as a joke because you do want her. You know what I'm saying? So I do see Lexi's point in that regard. And then they say, okay, so there's been a lot said about the now infamous incident where Jesse hopped into bed with your castmate Imrul while he was having a threesome and got his toe sucked. Is there anything else you want to say about that? And Lexi says, well, it being 37 minutes is crazy. If I knew that, I probably would have ended it right away. Let's be honest, there was probably more than toe sucking. It was also severely downplayed to me that it was honestly seemed like a joke. But entering a room where people are not clothed, where it's clearly a sexual environment, if I had all of the knowledge, then I probably would have made a better decision. Again, even for my physical health, because that's something that is totally not okay. Initially I did think it was a joke, but 37 minutes is a long time. It is completely bizarre to go into someone's room where a sexual situation is going on And I think for Lexi to feel like her physical health is at risk is a completely valid thing to feel. Then they say, what were you told about it at the time? And Lexi says, so I went home for the weekend to support my family, and Jesse was calling me. He called me like 38 times in 48 hours. I'm like, there's no way this man could be doing anything crazy. I was feeling really good. He calls me when he gets back to the city and says his cousin's friend stayed over. They liked him. They went into the room, stood in the doorway to see if they were like okay or needed anything. I was like, well, you shouldn't enter that room. That was so weird. Now I'm seeing, well, that definitely is not what happened. And you only learned the truth when the episode aired. And then she says, yeah, I didn't find out the details. On the after show, he said, yeah, no, there was no way I was telling Lexi, which again sucks because I definitely feel like that took away a lot of my autonomy, especially because we were exclusive right after that and we were exclusive before that. And then they say, what was your relationship specifically with the girls during the summer? And Lexi says, I definitely now see where the disconnect was. I definitely felt alone all summer and I felt very isolated, which is interesting because that's something I mentioned a couple weeks ago on the podcast. Like, I felt like she must feel so alone and isolated. But I think now watching it back, I totally understand that they were being fed so many different stories that, of course, they were going to be so hesitant towards me. I really hope that now that seeing and watching that, they can see where I was coming from and that I actually had no idea. And hopefully those relationships can move on to me having deeper, more solid friendships. Gabby and Lindsay were definitely who I bonded with most. I bonded with Gabby after kickball. She wasn't in the house that much. And then Lindsay, I would say after me and her were having those deep conversations at kickball, that's when we were really like, okay, you're my girl. And, I do definitely feel like there was a disconnect with Lexi and the girls in the house. I'm glad that she did have Gabby and Lindsay because it sort of seemed like if she didn't have Jesse, she sort of would have had no one. But, I do sort of blame Jesse for that because he's creating this ambiance with the girls that Lexi is crazy. He's saying, don't touch my arm, or you can't do this, or, he's always creating this vibe about Lexi when he's talking about her to the other girls that, she's this crazy girl. There's something wrong with her, that he's annoyed by everything that she wants. So, of course, the girls are like, oh, wait, really? She's being like that? Or, oh, she's making you do this? Or, oh, she's not allowing you to talk to us? When those weren't really the situations that were happening. So, I think it does make sense, therefore, that the girls would kind of be like irked by her. So I don't necessarily think it's even a mean girl situation. And I don't even think she deems it that way. I think it was a situation where, initially when you're dating someone in the house, you do sort of lean towards that person and not spend as much time with everybody else. And that may have been a little bit of a bad on her part, not trying to, not just spend time with your boyfriend, but try to spend time with everyone. But in the same vein, it's hard to spend time with everyone. And when everybody's giving you sort of this side eye, being like, oh, I don't know if I want to get to know that girl. And then it says, from your perspective, Jesse was having a one way, was having, or sorry, from your perspective, Jesse was behaving one way towards you about your relationship, but portraying it completely differently with the rest of the house. Why do you feel that he was doing that? And she says, I think the more Jesse talks, the more the camera is on him. So if he's talking to me, the camera's on him. If he's talking shit about me, the camera's on him. I know that Jesse was always talking about Wes getting so much attention last year. He would always be like, I didn't get that much attention. I thought he meant more so career wise. I didn't think he meant drama wise. And then they said, have you spoken with Jesse since the show started airing? What about your other castmates? And she says, no, Wes has checked in on me. Carl Radke checked in on me. Lindsay checked in on me. Gabby checked in on me. And Imrul has checked in on me. And then they say, you guys haven't filmed the reunion yet. How do you feel about it? And she says, I'm really looking forward to the reunion to be able to hash some things out with Jesse. I think somebody that can blatantly lie when they're being filmed is a very scary person, and I'm not necessarily interested in anything with him. And then they say, Summer House is filled with exes, Carl and Lindsay, Wes and Sierra. Are you interested in coming back to the show if it means spending the summer with Jesse again? And Lexi says, that's a hard question because I think at the end of the day, the exes that are in the house also respect each other. And as much as it didn't work out, they don't want to necessarily be best friends. They can also respect that they live under the same roof. So, in reading this, I really feel bad for Lexi. And I feel for her in the sense that I don't think she is going to be coming back to the house next summer. And I think, you can look at this in sort of a feminist perspective from the sense that if a girl gets a boyfriend in the house and sort of just focuses on that and that relationship doesn't work out, she's sort of done for the next year. While the situation in reverse, last year, Wes was a newbie, comes into the house, spends a lot of time with Sierra. He doesn't then get kicked off the show. Now, I think the difference is that he did build a lot of friendships outside of just his relationship with Sierra. But people were pretty mad at Wes at the end of last year, you know? I mean, people were sort of scandivaling him a little bit. And, the whole house was mad at him. The girls were mad at him. But somehow he was able to come back. And I don't know if that's just because he's a goofy man and we're able to forgive goofy men. But with Lexi, I mean, this really does feel like the end of the road for her. I mean, the way these articles are being written, the fact that she's not being included in articles, I feel like, I don't know, there's a sadness that I feel comes with this. And I don't feel like there was anything about her that didn't fit well with the house. She is outgoing, she's sweet, she is easy to make friends with people, she gets along well with people. Yeah, she's young, but that's where the show is going. And when Jesse and Wes started, I mean, Wes was like 28, 29, right? So, or he's 29 now. So I don't think it's necessarily anything about her. I think it's about the fact that it didn't work out with Jesse. And so that sort of means that she's done for the show. And that's just really sad for her. Now, she also did virtual reality, which gave us a little bit more insight into her relationship with Jesse, which is just wild in the sense that he was apparently supposed to be moving to her. And I don't know if that meant moving in together because remember, she kept going on about this long distance thing. So I don't know where they were moving to or where she is going to. Apparently, they were also talking about getting a cat together, like just insane things. So he's amping up this relationship to her, but downplaying it to everyone else, right? And another interesting thing she said was that when she had a birthday party, she invited everyone, and the only two people who didn't respond were Jesse and Sierra, and then they ended up spending that day with each other. Now, I don't know if you guys saw the pictures of Jesse and Sierra at Coachella together last weekend, but like the internet is just going wild with it. He's like touching her stomach. It's super like Jesse and Sierra coded. And like people are sort of shipping it and loving it. But again, I feel like it's just so disrespectful to Lexi because they were in a full-on relationship. And now Jesse is just going back to his normal Jesse activities. Now, I don't really blame Sierra for this, really. She's never been friends with Lexi, but still, the girl's girl of it all. I feel like she could have, you know, had a little bit more respect for Lexi in the house. That being said, Jesse is the one who's being super touchy. But I'm also kind of just like mad at the fandom for being so like pushing the whole Jesse and Lexi, or sorry, Jesse and Sierra thing, because don't we want better for our girl Sierra? Didn't we just see what this idiot Jesse did to this poor girl Lexi? This is not what we want for Sierra. And we know that Sierra dates intentionally. We know that it didn't work out with her and Wes because she wanted a real boyfriend. So why do we want her to have sex with someone which she can't even really do? She's talked about that in the past where she can't really mentally have sex with someone that she doesn't have feelings for. So why are we pushing her to have sex with someone that she doesn't have real feelings for, or pushing her to have feelings for someone who's we know is not going to end up reciprocating those feelings in a real way? So let's stop pushing that. And at the end of the day, though, I don't think Jesse is a bad guy. I think, I think everyone gets a little drunk with the fame after a year or two of being on reality TV. I think that might be a little part of it. And I think he was super infatuated with Lexi and didn't know how to communicate infatuation. So I don't think that he necessarily really loved her or wanted to get a cat with her or wanted to move in with her or wanted his parents to meet her or any of these things. I just think that maybe he thought that that's what you do when you're in love, but he wasn't in love. And so he was just doing all of these things that he thought he was supposed to do that he wasn't really feeling, which ended up in turn just causing pain and hurt to poor little Lexi. So that's what's going on with Summer House. Let's move on to Vanderpump Rules and the Valley because we have a little bit of news going on there. Oh, I forgot to mention Jesse on Chicks in the Office. Okay, so we have a little bit more here. So he explains that with the whole West and Lexi flirting thing, he wasn't saying that he thought, or basically he was saying that he thought it was a good thing. He thought that like West was like all over Lexi and that this was a good thing because it meant that they could all just be flirty with each other as like a big group. But Lexi took it as a bad thing because she took it as Jesse saying, "Oh, you're flirting with West," which she didn't feel like she was doing. Now, I get this on both ends because Lexi's saying like why is this even an issue that you're bringing up, even in like a funny, good way? Because I actually wasn't flirting with Wes. I wasn't doing the thing you said I was doing. But I also think it's super bizarre that Jesse's like, yay, my bestie is flirting with you. My bestie is touching you. You're touching him. This is how we all should be. This just shows this man is not ready for a relationship if he thinks it's a good thing that his best friend is flirting with his girlfriend. Yeah, that just shows where we are. Now, I just want to talk about the Imrul of it all for a second. So, as we know, Imrul has been getting this very strange edit where basically all we see of him is him being an orgy beast. And I think it's a bit odd because there must be more to this guy than that. And I wanted to say for a while, like, is this a racialized thing? Like, we're kicking Bailey off the show. She's a person of color. Gabby is barely on the show. She's a person of color. Imrul is being portrayed as, being a person who only has sex and doesn't do anything else. And he's a person of color. And is there anything, related here to why these three people aren't really getting any screen time? And the chicks in the office girls asked Jesse if Imrul's edit is accurate. And he basically said, yeah, like he was coming in and out, having sex. He really didn't try to get to know anyone except for Carl. So he says, yeah, the edit is accurate. But then I saw this tweet that I wanted to read to you guys that I thought was really interesting. So somebody said, this needs to be said. I'm sorry, but I'm still stuck on the Imrul treatment and reaction online. I'm brown, and let me tell you, there's a really weird phenomenon where racism against brown people in brown countries is straight up treated like a joke. I'm seeing people online calling Imrul greasy and a predator. It's so out of pocket, and I'm constantly thinking if this behavior would be so offensive if it came from a straight white guy. Okay, I think that's insane that people are calling him greasy and a predator. That is absolutely disgusting and gross. Because as I keep saying, I really feel like the concept of this show from its inception was a show about a bunch of people who party and sleep with random people on the weekends. And I really don't think that Imrul is doing anything different than what the concept of the show was designed for. That being said, I think the people on the show now have maybe outgrown that sort of lifestyle. And so it seems like Imrul is maybe the only one doing that sort of thing. But I don't think that there's anything predatory or greasy or gross about it in the way that it's being portrayed. And I'm sure that this guy does have more to him. I mean, he even says that on camera that, I want to be known as more than this. He talks about how he was undocumented for a good majority of his life, and now he just wants to live free. But he even says, I don't want to be known for just this. And so I just wish, I don't know, people tried to ask him things that were outside of his sexual prowess. I mean, all we see people talk to him about on camera is being an orgy beast and who he slept with. Why don't you guys ask him about where he went to school or I don't know. I just feel like there has to be more to him. And I feel like it's just an interesting perspective that a lot of people are having as to whether this is like a racialized thing. Okay, so now we can move on to VPR/ The Valley. And what we have here is Randall Emmett being in hot water again when it comes to movie production. So this article came out from the Los Angeles Times that says WGA bans writers from joining Martin Scorsese Randall Emmett film project. And it says that Emmett, the founder of Convergence, has been on the WGA strike/unfair list since 2020. Two companies he founded and co-owned failed to pay over $700,000 in compensation, P&H contributions, and interest due to WGA writers. Low-budget action movie producer Randall Emmett, low-budget action movie, recently unveiled a high-profile collaboration with Oscar-winning director Martin Scorsese to bring the story of a deadly 1982 avalanche near Lake Tahoe to the big screen. The project, Wall of White, is being produced and financed by Emmett's production firm, the Convergence Entertainment Group, according to Hollywood trade site Deadline. But the Writers Guild of America West issued an advisory Wednesday forbidding its members from working on the film. The Guild cited Emmett's failure to pay writers for work on past projects. Since 2020, Emmett has been on the Guild's strike list. Emmett has a long history of refusing to honor obligations to writers, and the Guild has filed numerous arbitration claims against companies owned by Emmett over the last decade, the WGA said in the email, adding the Guild rules prohibits members from working for or selling literary material to companies or individuals who are on the strike/unfair list. Scorsese and his representatives were not immediately available for comment. We are fully financing this movie, and we have every intention to settle this dispute in the coming weeks, Emmett told The Times on Wednesday. Our representatives will be reaching out to the Writers Guild so we can be putting this matter from 6 years ago behind us. So, as we all know, Randall Emmett has a long history of being a piece of shit. We know he owes so many different companies money. He owes Jax Taylor money. I'm surprised he even has Martin Scorsese or anyone still big in his, repertoire, or that he's even still making movies, because pretty much ever since he broke up with Lola, he has been being sued by like everyone and their mother. So I don't even know how he still has any projects that he's getting off the ground, let alone people to participate in these projects. And if I'm not mistaken, didn't he change his name at some point so that he didn't have to be associated with, the Randall Emmett current name that he's associated with so that he could produce movies under that name? Am I wrong about that? I swear I remember that happening. So this all makes complete sense. This guy is one of the shadiest people in Hollywood in terms of business practices, and I hope this movie doesn't move forward. Okay, in other Vanderpump Rules related news, we had Lisa Vanderpump speaking to Us Weekly about her relationship with James Kennedy. So, as you know, Lisa Vanderpump has been on a million podcasts lately and speaking to the news about James Kennedy, and pretty much has been supporting him along the way, saying, yeah, he's an idiot and he made a mistake, but how am I going to not support someone who I've supported for years? And she's been getting a ton of flack for her support of him. So then she was in Us Weekly this past week, and she had the following to say. She said, I give people chances. I believe people mess up and then they learn from it and they have to. But it's like with James, where he was in the headlines recently. I've had so much patience with him, and I was so happy to see him with Allie doing so well, she recalled. I know addiction is a disease, and we talk about that. And you just at some point, I had to say, I cannot support this anymore. With some people, when they keep making the same mistakes, so that's frustrating for sure. So a lot of people were like, okay, Lisa Vanderpump is finally denouncing James Kennedy. Now, I didn't fully take it that way. She said, like, I cannot support this behavior anymore. On the back end, do I think she's still speaking to James? Yes. But I think she's doing what she knows she needs to do publicly, which is really annoying to me. I think she knows that she's getting a ton of public backlash for her support of James. She, like I said, she's done a ton of press supporting him, podcasts, articles, interviews, everything. And now finally, months later, she's like, oh, now I can't support this behavior anymore. Really? What happened since last week, since you did Bravo's Hot Mic when you were supporting him? It's just such bullshit. She she knows that she has Vanderpump Villa coming out. She knows she has the reboot of Vanderpump Rules. So she knows that she is still important in the media space. So she realizes that she has to, make the PR machine do what it does and try to make her look in a better light. And she's realizing that the only way she can do that is to denounce James. But at this point, like, we're all seeing through that. We're not stupid. You've been supporting this guy for 10 fucking years. It's not even just supporting him now for the past few months. It's literally the fact that you've supported him through what he's done to Kristen, what he's done to other women, allowing him to continue to be on this show when he's literally abused people, and continuing to support him after this DV incident is really just the icing on top of the cake, right? It doesn't really, it is who Lisa Vanderpump is. We expect her to protect men at all costs. And so for her to say now, 10 years and 3 months later, you know what? Now I don't support him. Okay, Lisa. Okay, Lisa. I did an episode last week called The Downfall of Lisa Vanderpump with Sophie Ross from the Snarkbait podcast. And I don't know if maybe Lisa listened to it and was like, all right, well, it seems like my downfall is imminent. And if I don't denounce James, then, it's going to happen. That's what I assume. I assume, of course, that she listened to the episode. But, it's just so funny that right after that, right after Sophie and I come up with all of this evidence to show how much Lisa Vanderpump is just like this man-hating machine woman-hating machine that really only cares about herself and her brand and supporting the men around her, that, she comes out to be like, oh, now I'm going to denounce James Kennedy. Okay, Lisa, you know. Okay, let's move into a little bit of news from the Valley. So, as you'll recall, if you watched last week's episode of the season premiere of The Valley, we are still dealing with strife between Kristen and Janet and Zach. And basically, what happened was after season one or during season one of The Valley, Janet went on a podcast and said that she didn't think that Kristen and Zach wanted her baby to come to full term, which, started a whole shitstorm in the comments, which led to Janet saying something in the comments like, that Zach didn't just say that he didn't want her baby to come to full term, but he also said that he wanted her to commit suicide and that everyone in the group knew that he said that and distanced themselves from him. So that is what I ended up posting last week on Instagram to give some context, and it really did come with a lot of mixed reactions. Now, Sheena ended up coming out on her podcast and adding a little bit more context to this, so I'm going to play that clip for you guys now.
We've discussed this on the podcast before with Janet. She's talked about her mental health struggles. She's talked about her battle with suicidal thoughts, and I have her permission to say this, I just want to say that, she had also shared that she had an attempt once to end her life, and that put her on a 72-hour hold. Mm-hmm. And for other people to use that against her and to
weaponize her like that.
Exactly. He had made comments that were not caught on camera. So people thinking that everything at the finale, like that's all he said and it wasn't that big of a deal. A comment that he made that was not caught on camera was that she should have killed herself when she had the chance. Because of what he said, it caused his best friend, Brittany, to distance herself from him for many, many months, over his birthday, over the holidays. It wasn't until Brittany's birthday last year where she pulled me aside and she was like, Janet's not coming tonight. She has a new baby and Zach really wants to come, really wants to celebrate me. Like, what do I do? What do I do? And she was comparing my friendship with Tom Sandoval to her friendship with Zach, being like, okay, well, Tom really screwed up, but then you gave him some grace. And Zach really screwed up, but I want to give him some grace. And when she put it in that, I'm like, I understand where you're coming from, but it was just so dark. And then that night, Zach tried to talk to me and apologize.
And I said the same thing.
It's not the time or place, not the time or place. And then he said something similar about someone else that we care about.
Somebody else.
And that's where I have to disagree with Kristen because I don't want her supporting this behavior.
Okay, so my friend Amber, who runs the podcast page, runs the Instagram page, Breaking the Rules Pod Clips, she posted a clip of this clip from Shenanigans. And then Kristen came up in the comments and she wrote, "This shit trying to make us look insensitive about Janet's mental health struggles is really pissing me off. Janet has many times joked about the 5150 hold. Since Sheena decided to make it public, and they might as well make public why she really went that night, I'll let them take it to another podcast from here." And then she also said, "This shit trying to make us look insensitive about Janet's mental health struggles is really fucked up." And then she also said, "Also at Sheena, you shouldn't be talking about this shit on your podcast. We have a reunion to film things, and this will be addressed." So, all of that being said, listen, I want to take Kristen out of this for a second because I don't think this has anything to do with Kristen. I understand that she's supporting her friend Zach, but Kristen hasn't done anything here. I love Kristen. Let's take Kristen out of this. So this is, to me, between Zach and Janet. So if Zach said about Janet, I don't care if she kills herself or she should have killed herself when she had the chance. Sorry, that's what he said. She should have killed herself when she had the chance. Knowing that she has a history of suicidal ideation, I think is fucked up. Those of you who are frequent listeners of my show know that I myself have battled with suicidal ideation. And I think if someone said she should have killed herself when she had the chance, yeah, I think that would really fuck me up. That is a really fucked up thing to say. I also want to, highlight again that this was what he said to Brittany. Okay. This isn't something that Janet heard and then relate it to the rest of the group. This is what Zach said to Brittany, and then Brittany made that conscious decision on her own to stop talking to Zach, her best friend, for 4 months. So I think that's really fucked up. But then you have Kristen saying that Janet makes jokes all the time about a 5150 hold. That's an interesting point too. I mean, it's funny because I, as somebody who has had suicidal ideation, do constantly make jokes like, "Oh, I'm going to go kill myself," or, "Oh, I'm just going to go off myself if I have to go do this." And I shouldn't make jokes like that. I think it probably is fucked up for me to make jokes like that. But am I someone who has had suicidal ideation but also jokes about it? Yes. So that is possible as well. I also think it's really interesting for Kristen to say that there's a weird reason as to why Janet went that night or why she had the 5150 hold. So it seems like a lot more information is going to be coming out of this, definitely at the reunion, if not maybe a podcast earlier. But it seems like there is a lot more to this story than we really know, which is what I was saying on my podcast on the weekend, where I sort of felt like I don't know how to really recap the Valley or how to really talk about it right now because it feels like there is so much between Kristen and Zach and Janet and their history that we just don't understand. It seems like we are trying to make decisions on how we feel about people based on just knowing them now at like 40 when they have this whole history and this whole friendship together and this whole past that we just don't really have the context for. And I feel like sometimes when you come into a show without that context, you sort of lose things. Like I don't know if you guys remember the show Siesta Key. It's sort of like Laguna Beach, but in Siesta Key. And there was these two girls where in like the first episode or like the second episode, one punches the other in the face, and all of the girls supported the girl who punched the girl in the face. And I was just like, wait a minute, why are we supporting the one who did the punching? And it was because everyone really knew their backstory and why the one who got punched sort of deserved it or something like that. So that made no sense to me because I was like, wait a minute, I'm coming in here without any context and this girl just got punched in the face. So again, I feel like this is the kind of thing where we need a whole lot of context because I just don't feel like we have it. And this is going to get dark real quick. I mean, we're talking about suicidal ideation. We're talking about wishing people would kill themselves. We're talking about Jack's going to treatment, him kind of physically assaulting Brittany. As excited as I am for the Valley season 2, I also feel like there is such a darkness along with it that I think we need to always try to find a little bit of levity if we can in every episode because I'm a little bit worried about this honestly just being too dark for us for a Bravo show. Okay, let's move on to Teen Mom. And unfortunately, we have a really sad story here with regards to Janelle Evans. So, those of you who don't know the history of Janelle Evans, I will give you a brief synopsis. Janelle Evans is a Teen Mom OG, I believe, from Teen Mom 2. And she had her son Jace when she was 16. She got pregnant with a guy named Andrew. They didn't stay together very long. He never had a relationship with Jace. And basically, it was just Janelle and her mom, Barbara. And Barbara is an interesting character. She definitely had a very contentious relationship with Janelle, but it was kind of both of them. They were both really fucked up. And Janelle, being 16 years old, just wanted to go out and party and do drugs and not take care of her kid. And this caused a lot of strife between her and her mom to the point where her mom basically convinced her to give up her child to her mother. So she basically signed over her rights of custody to her mom. And in a way, she was sort of coerced to do that. She was only 16. She wasn't in the right way mentally. She was doing drugs at the time. And was it what was probably best for Jace at the time? Yeah. I mean, to have a real adult be making decisions for him, sure. But as the years went on, Janelle wanted custody back, and Barbara would never give it to her. Barbara argued that she didn't think Janelle was ready. And despite the fact that Janelle would start dating different guys and end up having kids with other men and have custody of those kids, Barbara would still never give Janelle custody. In my opinion, I think it wasn't because Barbara didn't think Janelle could. I think it was because Barbara had literally been raising him since birth and didn't want to give him up. She had created such a strong bond with him that he was basically her son and she didn't want to give him up. But Janelle and Barbara's relationship just could never get to a good place because of this. And in a way, I mean, how could you blame Janelle for that? All she wanted was her son back. How could she ever genuinely have a real relationship with her mother who's keeping the one thing she wants from her? You know what I mean? So eventually Janelle does get custody. And I have to mention, all the men that Janelle has been with before, none of them work out. So she ends up having a baby with her ex Nathan, and they get engaged. That doesn't work out. She calls the cops on him a million times. Then she gets it with a guy, David Eason. They have a baby together. He's not allowed to see one of his kids. Then he gets kicked off of Teen Mom entirely because he shot one of their dogs. Like, this guy is like a monster. He's against the LGBTQ. He wasn't allowed to film for such a long time. And then it came to the point where she had to leave the show because he didn't really want her to film without him. Then she called the cops on him a number of times for like domestic stuff. I mean, Janelle has always just had a really contentious history when it comes to her relationships. So Janelle eventually does get custody of Jace, but pretty much right after that, Jace runs away multiple times. On the third time that he ran away, he said that it was because David physically assaulted him, Janelle's husband. Janelle initially defended David because she always does. She always puts her men first. David was then charged with misdemeanor child abuse, but the charges were later dropped. And last I heard in terms of men, Janelle was dating this like her on again, off again friend, Austin Keene, who we did see on screen for a time. And I've seen them sort of be battling it out on social media about like, what's going on between them, but I will save that for another day. So, on to our recent news. Janelle calls the cops on Jace a few days ago. So here's what happened, and this is what I got from In Touch. On April 12th, 2025, Janelle reportedly placed a 911 call sounding out of breath and distracted, requesting police assistance following a tense altercation with Jace, during which she claimed he was smashing items, according to the Ashley. In the background of the call, Jace can allegedly be heard saying, "I'm not doing shit," as Janelle provided her address to the 911 dispatcher. "There's debris of a broken door everywhere," Janelle said, alleging her son also tried to leave the house. "He picked up the cage, the dog cage, and fucking threw it down the steps." The MTV personality confirmed that neither drugs nor alcohol were involved and that Jace was not taking any medication for his ADHD and defiant disorder. Officers arrived shortly after the call was made. However, Jace had already left the house, according to the dispatch notes obtained by the Ashley. Janelle urged authorities to place Jace on an involuntary 72-hour hold, which officers disagreed with, as her son hadn't threatened to hurt himself or anyone else. Authorities conducted a search of the surrounding neighborhood in an effort to locate Jace, but he could not be found. Officers arrived shortly after the call was made. However, Jace had already left the house, according to the dispatch notes obtained by the Ashley. Janelle urged authorities to place Jace on an involuntary 72-hour hold, which officers disagreed with, as her son hadn't threatened to hurt himself or anyone else. Authorities conducted a search of the surrounding neighborhood in an effort to locate Jace, but he could not be found. So basically, right after this, Jace started posting all of these like really depressing Instagram and TikTok videos saying things like, "When your mom kicks you out, then reports you as missing to the police. Depression takes over everything, it takes over your life." Um, and then Janelle, at the same time, is posting for her OnlyFans and posting herself going out to buy lingerie. Like, it's completely wild. So she, of course, gets all this fan backlash about like not spending time with her family. So she posts about like, I'm staying home with my family. But then right after that, she posts all these pictures doing like a shot ski with her friend Tori. So she's out partying. And then she makes a post saying, "I'm so busy, but put everything on pause for my babies, hashtag family first," while she's out there, doing fucking shot skis. And then she posts, "I was referring to my business I've been doing lately and just been getting behind because I forced myself to be a mother before anything else, like I always have. A highly edited TV show doesn't always show the truth, but you all are gullible still to believe I'm 16 years old in your heads. I'm 33 now, time to move on from the stereotype I've been given." But girl, you're the one out drinking and doing shots with your friend Tori after you called the cops on your son, and he's posting about how depressed he is. This is just, it's just really fucked up. And, Janelle is definitely no stranger to calling the cops on people. She's called the cops on her partners a million times. But now the fact that she's doing it to her son, it's like a whole other level. And it really just reminds me of this one scene that we saw years ago where she's in the car with Jace and somebody like cuts her off and she decides for some insane reason to follow this man. She ends up following him home, then hits his mailbox, gets out of the car and pulls a gun on this man, okay? And then when the police come later to, help her with the situation and when she's telling her mom about it, Jace says, "Mom pulled out a gun," and she goes, "No, I didn't, Jace. Why are you saying that? Why are you lying?" And the thing is, Jace is telling the truth, but I've never seen her do that before. I've never seen her call her son a liar to his face about something that he's telling the truth about. And that was such a fucked up thing to do because her son obviously knows he's telling the truth. He's being gaslit by his mom, right? It's very confusing. And it was a very telling moment for me because it made me realize maybe it isn't safe for her to be a mother because not only did she pull out a gun and like go after some guy while she's with her son, she's also gaslighting and manipulating her son into not telling the truth? Like, I don't even know. And that's why I just found this situation that much more upsetting because, she puts her child in this dangerous situation all those years ago. And in my opinion, you're putting your child in a dangerous situation when you call the cops on them every time you get in a fight with them. That's what I'm worried about for Jace going forward. I mean, you don't need police involvement. It can get to something, really dangerous. We know that the police aren't always on the up and up. So I just feel like, you're putting your child in harm's way as opposed to just properly parenting and trying to have a conversation with him and just trying to appropriately deal with your teenage son, whether that be communication, therapy. There's so many other ways that you can try to have a better relationship with your child than calling the cops. So I don't know. We're not going to see the end of this when it comes to Janelle Evans. We never do. She's always going through something. So I don't know. I'm so worried for Jace. I hope that he's still in therapy because there's no way he's not going to end up being so fucked up by his mother if she's continuing to call the cops on him. Okay, let's get into our last story, which is the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. And all I really have here is that Garcelle has basically unfollowed the majority of the cast from the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, including her ex-bestie Sutton. Now, a lot of people were really shocked by this, but I think it kind of makes sense. At this point, she isn't friends with any of these women. Now, I haven't done my deep dive yet on the finale of The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills and the three-part reunion, like I said I would. I'm still just trying to find the most perfect person to do it with, but don't worry, rest assured, I'm still going to do the deep dive. But, from what we've seen, Garcelle has made it clear she's not friends with any of these women. She doesn't feel like they've given her any grace. She doesn't feel like she has any true relationships with them. She doesn't feel like she really fits in with them. So it made sense for her to leave the show, but it also made sense for her to unfollow these women because, to each their own, but if you're following someone, it means that you have an interest in what's going on in their lives. And, she doesn't have an interest in what's going on with their lives because these people aren't her friends. Now, Sutton is a different story. I think that she had a really true and real friendship with Sutton for many years, but I think she feels hurt by Sutton because she feels like Sutton prioritizes the show and Kyle Richards more than she prioritizes her friendship with Garcelle. And I don't know if that's true. I don't know if this is a conversation they ever had, and I'm curious how Sutton deems this unfollowing and if she's upset by it. I also wonder if the two women have even spoken since the reunion. I do feel kind of sad for Sutton because if she continues on the show going forward, she's going to have no allies, she's going to have no friends. Garcelle was sort of it for her. But for Garcelle to unfollow the cast, I think really just shows her wanting to separate from that world. Garcelle has such a full life and world outside of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. She has so many projects. She's a producer. She has her family. She has her book. And I'm actually going to be doing her for the next episode of Be True Hollywood Story. So stay tuned for that. So, all of that being said, I think, there's a lot of women who really tie their identity to Bravo and to the Real Housewives and really make that a part of who they are. Well, with Garcelle, I feel like this was, a season for her, a reason, a season, a lifetime. You know how they say that everyone comes into your life for a reason or a season or a lifetime. And for her, I think that she came into the Real Housewives for a season. I don't mean one season, I mean like however many seasons, but I mean it in the sense that the Real Housewives was for a period of her life. It was for some seasons of her life, but not for her whole life. You know what I mean? She has so many different avenues and projects and talents that she can explore outside of Real Housewives. I think sort of the same for Beauvais, where she had done so many interesting things from Netflix and so many different kinds of projects and so many different sort of companies that she's worked for, where the Real Housewives for her is like, this is something that she wants to try. I don't know if Beauvais will stay on this long term, but if she doesn't, I think that'll make sense as well, because this can be for some people just something that they want to try, something to help maybe boost their brand, something maybe to help them make friendships. For whatever reason you want to join. But I don't think you have to be on the Real Housewives forever. And I think it's a really important thing. And I think it's something that Garcelle did really well, is to create a life and an identity outside of it so that once it's over for you, whether that be your choice or whether you're fired, that you can still have a very prosperous life and career outside of it. All right, well, that is the end of the episode for today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a 5-star review. If you didn't enjoy the show, please keep it to yourself. And, follow me on Instagram and TikTok at the Bravo Investigator. Love you, BBs, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Bravo Investigator podcast in partnership with Hurrdat Media. You can watch full-length videos on Hurrdat Entertainment's YouTube channel. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok at the Bravo Investigator. If you enjoy the show, please leave me a 5-star review. Love you, BBs. See you next time.
A Hurrdat Media Production.